Yeah, I guess I'll get started. And feel free to chime in on any of the stuff because I think at this point, 1.7, like we shipped 1.6. I think we covered quite a few random various things that we needed to do, but I think at this point, one of the things that Dennis and I had talked about in the last call was trying to focus 1.7. And I think we probably all have things from our own perspectives that are important. So I just kind of listed out things that I guess I'm thinking about, or looking through the backlog of tickets and things for discussion. But I'm sure Dennis has his own list of things potentially too. But I guess from my perspective, and then I'll shut up and let you guys jump in. Is the checkout experience, and that kind of as you guys know, touches on a lot of different things. And I suppose like the point of sale views, the cart view, the non-cart view, just kind of that general store, improving some of that. And then there's the keypad view, which, I guess kind of is lumped in with all of that. I'm sure we'll figure out a better way to talk about all this as we move forward. But like, I see all of that as kind of one thing, and then maybe improving some of the admin parts and bits, which Pav actually just tagged me in one of the issues that asked a question about that. And, I see all that kind of stuff as one, even if there are individual pieces within that, and that's a lot of work as it is. So there's that. I think separately, I suppose there's the crowdfunding in user facing view that hasn't really been touched too much in the past, that we could potentially polish up. That might be a nice, maybe smaller thing. And then there's some general stuff like I say general, but even as I look at this list, there's so much that we could focus on. But I'll keep repeating them just for the sake of discussion. There's the wallet send view, just a few polish up things that I was seeing, while looking through some of that. There's some stuff that Nicholas wanted on the wallet transaction view, kind of around pagination and some of the functionality there. And then there's kind of a general pagination improvement that we could make across the app. And then there's, I guess, speaking of more general things like kind of the table views stuff. But I see all of those things as stuff that would be a little bit more focused than just kind of general bug fixes and, kind of issues that touch all over the entire app, but would hopefully make a relatively large impact for a major release. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And, I could be persuaded in any direction, but yeah, ideally the checkout experience, because I think that, refreshing that would be really awesome.
Yeah, sounds good to me. This is something I'd really like to focus on with this release. And other than that, I've set aside some time to work on the plugins. So I've begun already to add more authorization stuff to LN Bank. So, for example, I had a few times the request for people being able to share their LN Bank wallets with other persons or other people. And yeah, this is something I started to implement right now. And then there's also the pod server plugin, which I'd like to release a first version before Riga, maybe. Yeah, but for the core app, I think I'll try to focus on the checkout page redesign and the POS keypad view.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. I wouldn't expand the scope of 1.7 too much, considering that August is holiday season, and then we have Riga planning. Lots of us will be traveling back and forth, so let's try to keep this one like, I guess, focus on the highlights, the ones that you already mentioned, like the checkout page in particular is something that will require quite a lot of tinkering. It's not just let's fix this and align this. It will be mostly trying to tackle actual problems and minimize the UI but at the same time, like, avoid customers being confused. So lots of things to also user test before we release, I would say. So I added some of the things for 1.7, but I will probably add a little bit more as we move towards Tuesday when we have a dev call. But the majority or the core should be on that roadmap as someone is sharing the screen. So that's all. I agree with the approach. Let's not go too crazy and tackle more issues. Let's try to wrap this ones and then test, and then if we have time we can do the small wins. But otherwise we will just get sidetracks with Riga, holiday season and everything. So it's usually like that in the summers, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Looking at the list, it seems like there's a lot of stuff in there already, and as you said, the checkout redesign alone might be a few weeks of work and back and forth.
Yep. Completely agree. And I think it will. And even some of the keypad stuff as well. Like, it's not as heavy of a lift, obviously. And Pav, you're absolutely right. There's a lot involved in that, which it sounds like, since we're all in alignment, maybe we can even kind of start jumping into some things today, because I've got some stuff for us to chat about. But yeah, I think the only thing that I look at here, which is really great to see, and thank you for adding everything, Pav, and getting this organized, is just the stuff that that Dennis is going to be busy on, on the pod server stuff, and Ellen Bank and all that other kind of stuff. I think that it'd just be good to keep that track, so that when we're knocking through all these things, that we're aware that Dennis has contributed all of those other additional things too.
One more thing to consider is that in Riga, I would love us to have like chat with community quite a lot. So I'm hoping that for the BTCPay Server Day, it will be like Q&A session where people will bring feedback to us, and then we will try to take notes on the stuff we can do. So it will be nice to clean up as much as, smaller things, bugs and everything before like tackling anything major, except the ones that we highlighted already.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It will be very exciting to hear from people.
I know, Andy, I know that I told you about Bitcoin Design Community is actually doing like a reference design for a point of sale system, and they're collaborating with Galoy. So it's an open call they recorded, so it may be good for inspiration as well, just to see if we are thinking about all the edge cases. I'm sure Galoy also has some experience, so we can either join their calls or just view Figmas and basically rewatch the videos. I can intro you there if that's needed, but it's interesting because a large team of designers will be working on exactly same problem at the exactly same time that we are. So
definitely. It's funny because like I have I guess without adding too many details about that kind of stuff, because it's recorded, but yeah, I've worked on point of sale systems in the past, but not for fiat stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what problems and stuff they're tackling. Is it similar? Like it's literally the same type of checkout experience, or is this for?
So this is for the keypad point of sale. I think for the checkout experience, I don't know. I'm certain at certain point it will be also tackled because they're working on merchant section of the design guide. But yeah, it would be nice to just. I can forward you the videos. I'll post in the UI channel for others to preview. Maybe we can learn some things at least.
No, for sure. It's always good to share learnings, because every instance of things is has its unique problems. But typically with this kind of thing, I'm sure that there's a significant overlap in the problems that we're solving. Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely keep an eye on that. And if there's anything vice versa that I can contribute or share from what we're doing, hopefully it'll be helpful to them as well. Let's see. I guess we have this original ticket, which I've read and taken into consideration some of the things, Pav, and they're actually part of some of the discussion topics and things for today. Should I share screen? Because we can just look at Figma and talk through problems. Okay, so there are a lot of things. I think one of the things that I started doing originally, and I guess maybe even before I start showing any kind of UI explorations or any of that kind of stuff, was this is all still very exploratory. None of this is meant to be like, this is the solution. One, for my own UI exploration, just trying to understand, one, the attempt for what we had originally done and why it might have been implemented that way, or what we might have referenced in the past, because I know that there's like overlap with the BitPay, really old BitPay UI. So kind of poking through that and trying to find the edge cases and break it, and things like what happens when you don't pay in full, and all sorts of things like that, to really try to define the full scope of everything that we're doing, so that we're designing all of this and improving this with the intention of scaling it, because obviously we want this design and these additions to scale for the future, and be in a great place for that. And then I guess the other point is just that, like I said, this is, still very early. And I think part of this, I wanted to explore some of these things with the intention of seeing what it could look like potentially in another way. And for us to discuss some of those major, I guess, keystone decisions, like how we handle things like expired invoices. Do we keep certain features that are necessary? And like, I think these are the kind of things where it's like, there's probably shared knowledge. Speaking of the Galloy call and kind of the stuff that they're doing on that end of things, like I'm sure that there's aspects of that we can learn from what they're doing and apply it to our own situation. So I say this with like the UI that we have here is not finalized by any means, and could be improved quite significantly, I think. But it was still fun trying to figure out things that we could do, and the kind of stuff that we want to support. And this is my kind of rough breakdown of the various states and things that exist within there. But obviously I'll formalize this more, and in addition to this, it's like looking up kind of average statistics for things like how height, width, all these kind of research things to figure out, like, ideally when this loads in its most default state from the minute that you go through the point of sale or the keypad or whatever it is, like how, what's the most optimal view, and then, kind of it goes from there. So, and I'll return back to these questions. So I'll kind of carry this around with us to discuss.
Sorry, Pav asked to share the link to the Figma. Is that possible?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Give me a second here. Hopefully that should get you that. And yeah, I need to get you guys added to this, because I'm pretty sure it's part of the larger Figma. It should be. It's just a separate subpage. So I think if you have access to that, which I believe all of you do, it should be accessible through there. But yeah, I think this is also something we'll open up and probably publicize a little bit more too, as some of the work progresses. But yeah, so there are numerous explorations I did, thinking about all of these sections and trying to break them down into their components, which is kind of what some of that, that just really ugly text is from earlier, and thinking through some of the problems that Pav had talked through, of trying to address things like, we're going to have, an info section, just a general title from the store and like maybe what it is, and or like white labeling, the amount due. Maybe we need more of an expand view, but we might be able to get away with this. And then if it's only been paid in partial, showing that it's only been paid in half, things like that. The additional of, what you pay with, and trying to make that more clear. There's so many options that we could do in Expanse. We could have it be a centered overlay. We could have it come in from the bottom, all sorts of stuff. And then, then we move on to the next section, which is like the copy scan section. There still feels like these are those kind of things where it's like the decision of like not trying to break anything. And I've omitted because I wanted to see how minimal we could get it. But obviously, looking at this, there's the payment link with the pay join support. And then there's just your standard, on-chain address. And then on the Lightning side of things, there's obviously like your node view and, multiple tabs for that kind of thing. So, that's something we have to support. You know, the notion of having a recommended fee could potentially go under there, opening wallet, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, like I said, I think my goal has been to try to minimize and see how much I can get away with. And even in these views, I'm also recognizing too that, you know, it's not showing like what it is that you're paying for explicitly, even though we literally only use, I believe it's the item description for the invoice, which is generated based on, you know, whether it's a point of sale, a crowdfund, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, these are the kind of things where I think we have an opportunity, you know, to potentially refine how that is and, you know, make, you know, certain decisions. Cause it's like, you could venture off into so many different directions of like, you know, do we show like, this is for Hong Kong donation, you know, and it's like the amount, and then maybe there's a details under that. Or if you've only paid in partial, you know, this expands because it's in, you know, a specific case. Whereas in general, you know, you've gone through a flow and you only need to see this is how much you owe, you know. Again, we could, you know, maybe more labels are necessary, that kind of thing. You know, so those are the kind of things I think from a UI perspective that can be improved, and probably we would err on the side of maybe being more specific. But I also think some of the discussions that we have here and trying to define what we think we need or what we can get away with removing, it would be a very worthwhile discussion. And then additionally, there are times where we use this X, you know, to get out of it, because it's like, you know, it sits on top of another view, or you're coming from one other view. There's all these other really weird little edge cases, you know, over the years that we've supported. And, you know, it's like trying to combine them all into one view where it all sits to where the, you know, at least the action and the payment method and QR code, and, you know, like, most of these details are pretty much to that point right above open and wallet is pretty crucial. So yeah, I guess, you know, I say all this because it's like, there's so many different directions that we could go, you know, and like whether we support white labeling or not is another thing. You know, have the scan copy, just like literally taking almost kind of what we have, where it's like the amount due might expand. Say I had components, and a lot of these things are hooked up because I have little animatics and prototypes and stuff. But like, you know, you can imagine, you know, amount due, it expands, pay with, it expands, you know, or it pops up from the bottom. There are numerous things that we could tuck into there if we wanted to, you know, and then you guys recognize the node, bolt 11, you know, that sort of thing. So all those pieces are there. And then to make things even more or less complicated, but I guess just for the sake of bringing up all the things, because we're going to be talking about this quite a bit, there's the invoice expiration, which figuring out what we want to do for there, I've kind of left it open because there's probably more to discuss here. And then there is, you know, what happens when a payment is made. I've added in the support for like view receipt and return to store, you know, questions about, and this may be more of a technical consideration, you know, can we actually know for on-chain payments how many confirmations have been made at the time? Is that something worth supporting or trying to show? You know, again, like, and that UI could be like, we could do dots, or we could do any number of things to show X of, you know, Y confirmations. And then finally, you know, when the payment's settled, etc. And then also how this interacts with the receipt, which is also something that I'm realizing there are a couple improvements that we could potentially make to that, where it's like, you know, for example, when you view the receipt, it's like we have the ability to go to the admin part of things and print it, but then maybe we want the ability to go back to the receipt itself, or not the receipt, the invoice itself, excuse me. You know, so a lot of considerations. And then, you know, obviously maybe there will be some tweaks that we make to this to make it match some of the things that we do here. But generally, you know, that's kind of where a lot of things are at. There's some other random explorations, but I think that gives you a pretty decent idea of like how varied this could potentially be, and how many issues we could have going through that. You know, but I think there are definitely some fundamental questions to ask, you know, about like the kind of payments methods that we want to support. Should we try to scale this for supporting, you know, more than 2, or if we're only ever going to do the Bitcoin Lightning support. Obviously I wish BIT21 was a reality, but for the time being, it's not. So if we only have those two options, do we try to default something a little bit more simple? But then obviously that leaves out liquid and or any other payments. I mean, my use case fits this, and I would be fine with this, but I recognize that there are, people who might want to support that, plus whatever various, shitcoin, etc., that they may want to add to that list too. So trying to keep things flexible in that regard. But like I said, this is a lot of information to throw at you guys. It was a huge dive into a lot of this stuff, and it touches on many, many parts of our app, as you guys know, which is kind of why, like, even in the process of this, there were so many other views that I went and tried to improve and figure out how we could kind of tie it into here. But for 1.7, it would be awesome to focus on this, and like maybe if there are other little issues that arise that could help improve some of these things, we can incorporate that in a 1.7, but to keep it focused on just trying to make this and maybe like that keypad view that you guys have seen, which as just for a little quick refresher,
let's stay with the invoice or checkout view first.
Okay. I was about to say, I don't know how much you guys need context for, but yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I think the payment method selector is a good thing to talk about, because at least from my experience, this is what has been critiqued the most in the past, and with the current state of the checkout view, because right now people often miss the chance to switch to Lightning, for instance, because they land on the page, and if the store has all the Bitcoin payment methods enabled, they would have three options: Bitcoin on-chain, Lightning, and LNURL. And for instance, if someone wants to pay with Lightning, they oftentimes miss that because they just see pay with Bitcoin, and they assume, well, Lightning is Bitcoin, and they try to scan the QR code, and then things happen don't happen the way they thought they would. So I think we should take a bit of time and think about the payment switch. And right now it's not as easy as with the above, where we have Bitcoin and Lightning, because, as I said, if you have the standard set enabled, it would be at least one more item, namely LNURL, which would also be an option in that list.
Yep, which is partially why if we couldn't figure out a way to simplify for this, which is why this felt more like the direction. But even then, I could still see, and that's a really good point, bringing up LNURL. For something like this, it becomes a situation where it's like you see this list, and maybe this is LNURL as opposed to this whatever icon or whatever thing. Maybe it's similar to Lightning.
In general, it's kind of unfortunate that we even have to bother the user with that choice. In an ideal world, as you mentioned, we would have one unified QR code to fit all the cases.
Yep, I know, I completely agree, and I think that's the thing where it's like, for me, it was trying to see, maybe what's maybe our most ideal. If there were some of these things abstracted away, so that the user doesn't have to think about them, because it's kind of like, one singular QR code that it's like, Bitcoin, boom, that's obviously the ideal and easiest state, given all the considerations and technical realities involved in that. But then, it's like the next is, it doesn't get much more simple than, toggling between two states, where it's like, we then determine or you then make a further distinction or decision behind what payment method you want to use for Lightning. Because I guess effectively with on-chain, it's basically the same. As far as I'm aware, I'm sure that there are other things, but it's like we have the payment link for PayJoin, and then you're just a standard address. So then it becomes a choice of like, okay, well, I know for sure that I want to pay with on-chain, and maybe we label this on-chain. Again, those are the, the changes and modifications that I'm sure we'll make over time. So trying to be too picky about that, but then or Lightning, and then from there you make the distinction of the type of invoice that you're going to pay. Or we handle as much of that as possible to simplify that experience for people. But yeah, I also agree. I think that above everything, this and kind of the scan copy tab, or whatever we want to call that, are probably the two most crucial things, and everything else is, kind of clean up, polish, figuring out things we want to support. And yeah, I just was curious, Pav, do you have any thoughts on this before I keep rambling on?
I mean, I have several thoughts. First of all, regarding unifying payment methods, there is already a solution for that. I'm sure you guys are aware. We also support it, but the way we present it is stupid, because we basically unify Lightning and Bitcoin within one QR code, but also then show it like multiple payment options. So yeah, so there is a solution for that, but it has some of the disadvantages, like QR code being too dense, so very hard to scan from some older devices. But I think in the grand scheme of things, this will unify at some point, and like having all of these different payment methods doesn't matter. So it's up to merchant to set up the best default for them and for their users. Like if I'm tech-savvy merchant, then have tech-savvy Lightning users, I would probably prioritize Lightning, but for the rest of the users, they probably will only put Bitcoin. I think we need to redefine like what are we trying to solve, because this to me looks very nice, but it is just prettifying what we already have. Are we actually solving problems with this, or are we like just simplifying? That's a big difference. So I think we also need to take a look at what others are doing. Like there are so many other payment processors. What I would do is take a look at their checkout pages and do like a quick competitive analysis just to see how they handle things. For example, if you go to BitPay, they now have completely different UI. So let me see, I had it somewhere here. So here it is in the chat. If you open a link in the chat, you will see their invoice now looks quite different. I'm not sure if you will be able to open it because it's already requesting an address for me. Give me a second. So, okay, yeah. So I would do a competitive analysis and then just figure out like how are they presenting things, and just get some inspiration, because this to me looks, this looks like BTCPay UI, and of course, it definitely solves the selection of payment methods. It's more cleaner. It solves presenting stupid data in the like above the fold, because like the data that we show, rates and stuff like that, nobody cares about it. Nobody cares about recommended fee. Nobody cares about like pay join link. So this is basically a cleanup, but we also need to figure out how to add like those stuff for people who use pay join and things like that. So yeah.
I'm glad that we were able to cut through that so quickly, because that's how I feel looking at it, where it's like, here's a cleanup of what we have, and it keeps certain things, I guess, slightly more backwards compatible. But yeah, we're not pushing anything forward necessarily by doing this.
It doesn't necessarily need to mean that it's bad. Like it's probably, maybe it will solve problems that people have, maybe it's good. Also, one thing I would look is Tesla is using I think still BTCPay for Dogecoin or something like that. So I would definitely look at their checkout, because they also redefined it. It doesn't look visually appealing, but it provides quite a lot of information on how to make a payment, what to do. So that can also be one interesting thing to think about. Like, why is Tesla, has to explain all of this stuff in text and just have a QR code and things like that. So do we need to prove and provide additional context? How do we handle problematic states like invalid, underpaid, overpaid, things like that? So do we like want to have like frequently asked questions somewhere? I saw that you have like a tooltip. I assume that's for some of the questions. Yeah. So I would definitely like go towards cleanup, but I will also like try to see what are we trying to solve here. Like, And does it make sense to go in that same direction, or do we need to redefine it completely?
I think those are all great. Yeah, and I say that just because it's kind of like, I think this was helpful just to understand, what it is that we've done, because I think inevitably whatever we change too, whether it's minifying certain things, just doing general cleanup, because that may be the right solution for certain parts of it, whereas like, maybe the payment method selection with the QR code, like, that might be something where we do push the envelope a little bit more there, and a little bit more of a modern standard or whatever. But some of these other things, it might not require as much. So yeah, I'm sure that there's a balance somewhere in between there. And yeah, I'll definitely check those out, because yeah, everybody does things differently, and I think also with some of these things,
also like the timer, is it needed? Do we really want to scare people right away with the timer, like something ticking off like a bomb, or should we hide it until it reaches, like, I don't know, X percentage of time left, and then we show them like a warning, a pop-up, hey, your payment is expiring, like, here is what to do if you're having troubles, do this. If so is timer really needed? Because what I'm seeing is that BitPay is also like hidden it a little bit, the timer. It's not that visible as it used to be, so maybe there is a reason for that.
I would also look at Bitrefill in that regard. I think their checkout is pretty decent too. So
that's a good point. Yes, Bitrefill as well.
Yeah, but they do show the timer for invoices.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I've seen the timer definitely for a lot of things, but I agree, Pav, that like it's not necessary until maybe 25% of the time, depending. It's like, if you have the 15-minute default or whatever, it's like, yeah, I probably don't need to see this until, it's, down past, 5 minutes or something, say, or 4 minutes or whatever it is. And like, yeah, it could then be a bar that shows up. We could do the circular thing, because that's quite clever and clean as well. Like
how do you call that transition when it comes from the bottom and nearly takes half of the screen? Is there a name for it? I cannot remember, but that BitPay basically warns you, like they take half of the screen of the QR code and they say like it's expiring, try to make a payment within X amount of time. I can share
a little shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, that's kind of what I mean by the UI things. Like, we can get really clever, we can do whatever. I think you are absolutely right, Pav, that is the most important thing. And for me, exploring what we've done, that was my attempt to try to figure out what we've done in the past, where we're going, and then what problems we're trying to solve. And I think, surfacing these things, I mean, yeah, I think we all see pretty immediately, that's like, okay, here's what something might look like with a more prettified UI, but it still doesn't potentially address the confusing realities that people have to deal with. But it's like, yeah, I mean, really the main things are, what is this, how much, how do I pay for it, and, the ability to do that kind of stuff. But everything that you said about, like the recommended fee, all that kind of stuff, people, it's just, yeah, it's superfluous information. And if we still find ourselves wanting to show that kind of stuff, I'm sure, certain things if necessary, but I'm not that convinced that it's needed. And I think even looking at some of this, it's like, this is really trying to reduce that. But from the like partial paid or whatever, like that's the kind of stuff that, like, yeah, by default, that's not necessary to show. And it becomes similar to like invoice expiration, whether it's, tucked behind a, little circle thing that expands, or another shelf or whatever it is. I think the same goes for like, if I pay $20 or whatever out of this payment, then yeah, I would see like, okay, this much has been paid, and that would be present. But otherwise, I'm never concerned with that reality, because the assumption is that the user is going to pay this in full. So yeah, all really good things. And I think that that's going to be the crucial part. And I think these are really great resources that I will definitely check out how they're doing. I had heard that Bitrefill's checkout experience was pretty good too, but I hadn't checked it out in a little while. So we're looking forward to seeing.
I just had a look at what they do, and it seems very smart, because they, for instance, let you choose the payment method upfront, and of course, we could skip that step if there's just only one for us. Nevertheless, I think the way they do it makes sense, and it might make things easier for us as well. Because in what we see right here, I think we wouldn't be solving the problem I mentioned with people not being aware of, for instance, in this case, being able to pay with Lightning.
Yep. Yeah, we could talk payment links, and we could talk the various things, like something like the payment link. You have that. It could be an additional thing behind just the typical address that's shown. I imagine people are going to want to see that converted to whatever their local currency is too. And then pay in wallet is effectively open in wallet. Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, it sounds like that's the major thing. Like looking at even all of these, it's like the general thing of potentially white labeling this, so that you can include your brand, in your store name. I think will be a consistent thing. The invoice expiration, I agree with you, Pav. I don't know if we could remove it. I do feel like that's something that I would want to know for sure that it's going to expire. But yeah, I don't necessarily need to be hit with that message right away that it's like, okay, you have 15 minutes. It's like I'd only rather know when it's about to expire, so we can make that, whether it's this way, whether it's tucked around a little circle, whatever stuff we do more in the future. But yeah, it really sounds like it's this the payment method problem that we're trying to solve here. And I think if we can improve that and push that forward, then I think we'd probably be in a pretty good place. But I guess
there are like two things that we can do, like having payment method beforehand. But then, I mean, what we can do in BTCPay Server, for example, is that you can actually pay invoice from multiple payment methods. So if you pay, but people don't know this. Like Nicholas has implemented it, and it's been like a blocker to add payment methods beforehand. So if we add payment methods beforehand, what that does is it adds additional steps. So like BTCPay and the Bitcoin payments should be fast. You see QR, you scan it, that's about it. But if we focus, and I think our focus should actually be like Bitcoin, Unification, Lightning. Like we shouldn't care about shitcoins and payment methods because that won't scale in the long run anyway. And it will be like waste of time optimizing checkout flow for shitcoins that, will probably extend in a few years. So what I would do is just, try to see how we can make experience snappier, but also make it obvious that if you don't want the default payment method, you can change it. And and I agree. I know completely what Dennis is referring to, and lots of people have complained that if we look at our checkout today, that's probably the biggest complaint that people are giving us is not being able to understand that they can switch between payment methods. So that one certainly needs to be redefined, and then not getting enough information on what they need to do with certain things on that checkout page as well. And especially if we can improve the failed states afterwards, that will remove so much support that merchant usually needs to do. But it doesn't have to be done in this a release, but something just to think about. And I think really having a competitive analysis, if we can find some people in community willing to, if each of us registers at one of these services and tries and basically highlights, okay, I like this in this flow, I like this because it, solves X perfectly. And then we collect all of that in Figma somewhere and just, seek inspiration and see how they approach these specific problems, because at the end of the day it's the same problems that all of us are facing anyway.
Yep. No, definitely.
In general, I agree with what you said in the beginning. Nevertheless, I think being able to pay with one invoice with multiple payment methods is such an edge case that maybe only Nicholas and Cooks know about. And the thing about the shitcoin stuff is, yeah, of course, I'd like to skip that too. Nevertheless, if we do that, this would be a breaking change. And if there's the possibility for people needing that switch, we need to bring it in somewhere, because otherwise it would be a breaking change. So I think it won't be that easy.
So maybe I can chime in for a second. What happens if you hit the information button at the top right? Why not make that a little overlay of, hey, you can do this when you click here, you can do this when you click there, instead of just bringing up some text, so you get a sort of ghost mode over it where it just displays here. If you click here, you change the currency that you want to use. You want to switch to Lightning or whatever. Do something like that with that button, so it makes more sense on this page.
Yeah, of course we could do that, but ideally redesigning that page would work towards us not having to explain that much, because people have an easier time understanding things naturally.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good point, Bas. But yeah, I think what Dennis is saying ideally is true. But I think for there it would be the the only reason I saw this or this edition for that was maybe just something along the lines of like, you know, what is this, you know, that kind of thing. But even then, you know, kind of more context specific things. But you know, there are no bad ideas, and there's no thing to.
I mean, now that we are redesigning it, we can also get a bit fancier from the technical side. So, for instance, we could trim it down as much as possible when we know, well, this is the Bitcoin only build, and we can do something different, or maybe add the row for the payment method selection only if it's the altcoin build, and something like that. I mean, the current state we have right now is, yeah, it just grew historically because we extended it. But now that we rework all of this and, for instance, have the ability to distinguish between the Bitcoin only and altcoins build, we can get fancy there too, and potentially reach a state where we have something very simple for the Bitcoin only version.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely, like, even whenever I see this, it's like I'm still not happy at all with where it's at, and it's nice to hear the things that I also had, you know, skepticism that we could just drop. But I think the point that you brought up, Dennis, is the one that I think makes me a little bit more fearful of doing some of those things. And maybe you guys can alleviate that, but it was the backwards compatibility and like effectively breaking changes where like inevitably we're going to move people away from what we've done. But I think I certainly felt more hesitant to just be like, fuck it, let's scrap a lot of these things because of those realities, where it becomes more like we could transition people away from what currently exists today. But if we have a little bit more freedom and flexibility, we absolutely could simplify this. Like, I think we could cut probably almost half of what's on views to support something. And I agree. I think I guess the quote unquote innovation or the, you know, the real improvements come from effectively just this section right here. And yeah, I tend to lean more on Pav's side about not supporting shit coins, but maybe there is the type of thing where like you said, we could, you know, design with Bitcoin only in mind, but then, you know, we leave something a little bit more general for the altcoin build that's like, you know, 80% of the same, but like maybe we allow them to add whatever fucking coin. And it's like, you know, not this specifically, but like, you know, something like this where it's like, you know, it surfaces up all the same data in a similar format, but then maybe the coin that you select or whatever you add as a payment method, you know, is a little bit more generalized. But it's just kind of like where I agree with Pav from a conceptual perspective is it's like, yeah, we're spending time, you know, thinking around the way that they want to use their coin or do their thing. But I also recognize that, you know, these are merchants and people around the world who, you know, they will accept X, Y, and Z coin, you know, for what they're doing. And like, even though we have our particular thing and, you know, I have my, you know, all the views that we have, I think everybody on this call is probably the traditional definition of a maxi, but it's like, you know, yeah, where do we draw that line and the implications of what that means for people who, you know, might not continue to use BTCPay because they can't support that. It's a shitty, unfortunate reality though.
One more thing I think we need to consider is for instance, the SideShift plugin, I think, hooks into this view as well.
I haven't even checked that out. I should probably look into
Yeah,
that.
I'm not really sure. Nevertheless, I think Cooks added something to this view, and
yes, it adds like a tab called conversion, where you can basically pay with other coins as well. So, and also there is like an NFC plugin as well.
I'm glad you also brought that up, Pav. I'm realizing that I typed that. The NFC support is something also that would be exciting to add, but we don't. That might be out of scope for this, but that would be something cool, just to keep up with the times. You know, considering we're trying to be more up to date.
Can I add 1 or 2 points from a merchant side, maybe? I really don't like the current state that the user needs to be very technical to understand the difference between Lightning, Bolt 11 invoice, and LN URL. So I try to abstract that away, that I don't even offer choices that are not needed. So LN URL I only display when it's a top-up invoice, for example. You can configure that. I don't know, maybe just instead of having all these choices on a Bitcoin-only build, you could have like a toggle button, left and right, Bitcoin, Lightning, and that's it. Keeping it as simple as possible.
Yep. I mean, I agree.
I know we're not going that direction. We want to support the altcoin communities for some reason, but I mean,
nevertheless, as I mentioned, this would be an option, and we could also detect which kinds of payment methods are available, and display stuff based on that. So if it's only Bitcoin and Lightning, we can show the toggle, and otherwise the more expandable version.
Another option would be to keep the current state of the checkout flow as a version 1, so to say, and have an innovated version 2 that you can choose from checkout experience settings that all the innovation is happening on. So we would have backwards compatibility, but the new innovation would be locked away for Bitcoin-only builds.
Yeah, that's also an idea I brought up when we initially discussed this, because Pav was worrying that this might be some kind of unexpected change for users and merchants, and so we could have a version where we have people opt into the new potentially experimental version, try things out, iterate based on feedback, and once we're done, we could make this new version the default.
Yeah, I like that approach. We can then go a little bit crazier and experimental, and not break stuff for people who update. So that can definitely be one approach to do in 1.7, and then maybe we will do it in 1.8 or 1.9 or 2.0. Who knows? I just wanted to share a screen to like illustrate you the unification of the QR code. Hopefully it will work, but let me see. Okay, yeah, I can see it. I'm not sure if.
Yeah, can see it.
Yeah. Currently, is it? Oh, it's me. Okay. All right. I was just trying to do it to help to run out of time. But yeah. Okay. So
what this does is basically it says like this is both Lightning and Bitcoin within one QR code. So if you have a Lightning wallet, and there is no need to switch, like this default QR code that you see. If you have Lightning wallet, it will default to Lightning and pay Lightning. If you have like on-chain wallet, it will detect on-chain and pay on-chain. And there is no need to have like switch between Lightning and Bitcoin at all.
That's that backup feature that you can enable in the settings, right?
Yes. And that's like the standard that I hope one day we will, go for. The only problem with it is that like you can see QR code is quite dense, like lots of information. So it may happen that people with very old devices may not be able to, scan it. And that's the only problem with this.
So we need to make it bigger in order to be easier to scan, or what's the issue?
No, in general, it just has way too much information. I think even if you uppercase information, it may reduce a little bit of like density in the code, but it will still be like, because it contains like a lot of information within a QR code. So it's just general thing with that approach. But I posted a website if anybody wants to read, bitcoinqr.dev, where it really explains what's going on. And we have been supporting this for over a year, I think. It just people aren't aware of it. And like the way we implemented it is like, if we unify payment methods, why are we even showing like Bitcoin and then Lightning in the, you know, it's weird. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
oh, sorry.
I mean, I just wanted to say, like, here you can see like some of the problems that we have, like that you already emphasized. Okay, payment methods, and then like all the information, like Pavlenex donation. Then why the rate? Like, why would I care about that? You know, it should be like hidden. I just maybe want to know amount, and that's about it. And then like scan, copy. How do we handle? Can that be on a single screen? You know, and if you go to copy, look at the amount of things that I can copy. Like, I can copy the amount, I can copy the address, I can copy all of them. I'm not sure who paid the invoice, but
yeah, I was about to say I didn't. Oh well. And then you go to view receipt or whatever. Well, somebody's trolling.
Yeah. So let's talk about the the success state then.
Well, so actually, one other last thing that I wanted to touch on there, because fundamentally I agree, Pav, and I realize the technical limitations because I've kept up with the BIP21 stuff. But with that in mind, you know, I think we could reduce the checkout experience significantly if we leverage that, because obviously there's no toggles or whatever, you know. But due to like, I guess it does feel like one of those choices where it's like that might be the most ideal experience, but then there are, you know, a degrading experiences that we may want to support. And I don't know if we want to approach that, because it's like I could mock things up where it's like, okay, here's the BIP21 most ideal, you know, like the most pertinent information with the various, you know, like error states, etc. And then here's the kind of like degraded maybe, and maybe that becomes kind of like the altcoin, like, you know, not BIP1 thing, and we kind of roll it into one. So it's either one or the other. But I think I'm just trying to think about the framework with which we want to approach some of these things, because, you know, one, from just designing it and getting feedback on these things and showing it to the community, but then there's the additional part of like having to build it and, you know, like how you might enable that via the admin settings or whatever it is. But I think we're all on the same page, which is really fantastic. And I think we know what the problem that we're trying to solve is, even if we're not there yet.
Yeah. So just like summarize, currency selection is a problem. I guess invoice expiration can be discussed. It's not a problem, but it can probably be like a little less prominent, at least in some of the initial steps, or it doesn't have to be. Like, I'm not completely for removing it, just maybe as a concept, it may be helpful to display it at certain amount of time. And then we have all the amounts and copy pasting that is very tricky. So can that be on a single screen? And then we need a little bit of text to explain people, okay, scan this or do this, because what I'm seeing is that even B3, Field, Tesla, and all of these guys have invested like a lot of efforts into writing proper copy and explaining people what to do. Like, if you simplify it and do it bare bone without giving people context what to do, it can like backfire, you know.
Agreed.
And what we want to achieve, like, okay, people to be able to pay right away, and then in case of a problem, they can figure out a solution themselves without bugging merchant way too much, or, you know, providing proper context to a merchant in order to troubleshoot a specific issue. So that's, I think, core.
Yeah, and I think we'll be able to get away with showing more of that, like, you know, scan or tap the QR code to do X, Y, and Z thing. And yeah, I'll take a look at the Tesla experience to see all the various things that they are, you know, making explicit in copy. But okay, well, cool. Then I'll proceed. So I guess for the next time, then I'll proceed with the BIP21 as the most ideal experience, and then, you know, and try to make components for, you know, what happens if they do pay partial or overpay or any of that kind of stuff. And kind of take pieces that are valuable from these other explorations, and then we can then talk about that, and then and see, because I guess at this particular moment, like, if let's assume ideal experience though, and I know we're a little bit over time. I got about 5 more minutes, but let's assume ideal experience, like, you know, we implement BIP21 invoices today. you know, other than the technical constraints, is that something that we could actually feasibly do? I know we already support it. We have a lot of the technical foundation there, but like, what are the realities of shipping with that today?
You mean shipping it as a default or shipping it?
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's been shipped for 1.5 years.
Yeah, I tried it out. I didn't really like the wallet support up to now. That's the reason I disabled it again. I don't know.
What do you mean? What do you mean wallet support?
For the for the combined invoice QR code thingy.
No, wallets don't need to support it. Like if on-chain wallet should just default to on-chain, and Lightning will pay it regardless. Like
that's what happens. But what about if the Lightning wallet isn't funded enough, and the on-chain wallet would have enough funds for it? It doesn't. There's no intelligence there in most wallets. I don't know. The user experience wasn't so nice, I think. I'd rather have the direct choice of saying I want to pay on-chain than I have to select it, I guess, at the moment at least.
Yeah, I agree. It's still probably early. I see that Square is experimenting, doing quite a lot of user research. Hopefully they will share some data soon. So I wouldn't treat it as like the default Dstrukt, but maybe just as an exploration in the future. It can be interesting. I think that should be the way in which, you know, the experience should go, but I'm not big on like people having too many choices and having to think about all these different payment methods. To me, it is insane, and it will only get even more insane. Like what happens when we have Bolt 12, Bolt 13, Bolt 75? Like, do we support all of these? Like, what the fuck?
I mean, the other extreme is what BitPay has been doing in the past, that you need to select which wallet you are using, and then they present you the best payment solution. We don't want to go down that route.
No.
That's the worst experience you can give to a customer. Like,
agreed.
Yep. That was my fear of breaking this into multiple steps, which is why I didn't go that direction with this either. Where it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a prettified version of our current experience, but it's like, let's reduce and minify where we can here, which is, I think, what this whole call was basically the signal to do. But yeah, I agree that the multi-wallet support stuff, I mean, depending for certain merchants, maybe that makes sense. But I think for us, I don't know. I'm very hesitant to go in that direction.
I mean, you would need to have an entire team dedicated to exploring and testing those wallets. You know, basically an entire team dedicated to doing that. Like, that's insane. It doesn't scale at all.
But I mean, on my checkout page, I'd at least give a recommendation of a Lightning wallet that works really nice. I mean, something like Breeze or so. I know we are not going to endorse anything specific, but maybe for a merchant, that is a way to go to reduce friction for the users a bit.
I mean, these are all valid feedback, all important things to think about. And yeah, that was the reason I asked about the BIP21, because it's like, yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest criticisms and one of the biggest challenges is the wallet support, and yeah, the fallback solutions for dealing with that, at least according, you know, to that page. And I think generally speaking, the feedback that you just gave is basically what I've also heard. And there aren't that many people that I can think of that I use regularly that's actively support it. So yeah, okay. Well, then I guess, yeah, that'll be a side exploration with the notion of like maybe trying to do the, you know, Bitcoin Lightning, and we'll try to simplify and push it into like one or the other for now, and not go with the like accordion expanded style, whatever. But then it's like, as much as we want to do that, it still leaves out the altcoin build stuff. It still leaves out like liquid and all those other things, because that doesn't, the like single one or the other tab doesn't like effectively the mocks that you guys saw, that, you know, if you have more than 2, it's really greater than 2, it becomes a problem. Maybe you could support 3 with that kind of like tab selector type of thing, but like beyond that, you almost need the shelf or some other form of payment method selector. Oh God, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Lightning on LTC. Once we go down that route, and that's why, like, I was looking at it, it's like, what do we want to optimize for? Because it's like, if we can say like, fuck all of y'all, we're doing, you know, Bitcoin and Lightning only, you know, it becomes a little bit, and even though there's LNURL within Lightning and Bolt 11, it still becomes a thing where it's like, it's a secondary selection after you've chosen fundamentally, okay, I'm going to use Lightning. Then, you know, you have the choices to make, or it could be that simple. But, you know, the minute that we go beyond 2 and or any altcoin support, it comes, yeah, it makes this challenge a lot harder.
Yeah, but as I said, I think this is a case where we can be smart on the technical side, and if we already acknowledge that this is a hard problem to solve all at once, we could at least distinguish these cases, have a best practice solution for the, I mean, potentially 80 to 90% cases, and offer a good enough fallback for the rest.
Well, I guess with that, Dennis, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I gotta split here in a second, but like the 90% cases, like, I mean, do we know what that is? Do we have an idea of what that would be?
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, we could say so. This best case would be we only have to distinguish between Bitcoin and Lightning, and if there are more payment methods than that, we could fall back to another solution.
Okay. I mean, that gives enough, because I mean, yeah, in my head, it's like, yeah, we have the potentially, you know, back and forth A or B selector, and then yeah, if greater than 2 or whatever, we maybe default to, yeah, that like accordion style, you know, again.
And for the unified QR code stuff, if we are going the route and making the first version of the redesign an opt-in, well, let's try to do our share and advance that spec and bring it to more people, because if it's not that widely supported, wallets don't have an incentive to support it, and yeah, we can, as I said, do our share to make it more widely available.
Agreed. Yeah, that would be nice. I would love if that was more widely supported. Okay, cool. I think that gives us enough. And I mean, this was fantastic. So definitely appreciate all of the feedback and clarification on things. And it sounds like, yeah, there's a clear direction of where to go at this point. But yeah, appreciate everything.
Yeah, as usual, I'm looking forward to get to all of that.
I think people will be excited about this one, despite you know the underlying work that's going to be necessary to make this happen. And I'm sure that there will be trade-offs along the way, because it's like I can think of the complexity that's introduced of like trying to support these various fallback things. But I fundamentally agree with you, Dennis. It's like, yeah, technically we should try to be as smart as we can and push for what we want to see in the world. And if we do make a like kind of separate, more experimental build, that gives us a lot more room, and we can experiment without worrying about screwing over all of our users, which makes me very happy and a lot less stressed.
Yeah, I think this one thing strikes the right balance for us being able to enhance the use case quite a bit, and not having too much complexity, because it would just be those cases we would distinguish. It's Bitcoin and Lightning, or more payment methods than that. I wouldn't want to go down the road and have other branches for that view, because that would increase the complexity and maintenance burden quite a bit. Nevertheless, I think that distinction makes sense, at least for that case.
Cool. All right. Well, I got to split, but fantastic call. I'm looking forward to our next one, and hopefully there'll be some more updates on my end that we can discuss.
Yeah, let's talk soon. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
For too long, we've relied on trusted third parties to process digital payments. The world is changing, and so are your customers. As cash payments decrease, digital payments become the standard. But existing apps charge transaction fees and lack privacy. BTCPay is a Bitcoin payment platform. It gives control over your business back to you, helping people achieve financial freedom with donations, payments, and more. Help your family and onboard your friends. Use BTCPay to host multiple stores and become a payment platform of your own. While the world changes around you, stay in control of your finances. It's simple to use, censorship resistant, and completely free. This is more than a payment platform. It's transforming digital payments as fast as the world around us.